Okay, there should be some sort of network connection.
Yeah.
Oh, can I help you?
Maybe.
What are you on the hunt for?
Get on my email.
Okay.
Right
Ooh, I
here.
like that.
There. And it's done.
Are you aware of the Detroit area leather goods company, Shinola?
Yes.
Internet connection.
Yes.
Oh, how do I?
Yeah, I need
You
to
go to your
step back to other
settings.
places.
Settings, oh, Wi-Fi.
A lot of neat stuff there.
Yeah, this stuff's from a place in North Carolina.
Once we do that, we'll hook up next time.
There's a button you can press for connect automatically. I don't know if I pressed it. Yeah, we can set that up.
Later. Email.
That's on you. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, good.
There you go.
Okay, good morning, all.
Morning.
Seems like we were just together a couple minutes ago, doesn't it?
Welcome back. We've had only 12 hours apart, basically.
Geez, I hate to go too long without seeing everybody.
Right.
Roll call. All good
We
to
don't
go?
need to do roll call. I got it.
Good to go, good. Public comments. Looks kind of quiet out there this morning. And minutes of the regular meeting, October 27th, if we'll review. In fact, can we just look for approval for all three, if you take a minute to review things, please?
Brad, I was wondering if the minutes from December 7th and 8th might want to reflect that Norma, Laura, and Lee were all here via Zoom and not in person,
Okay,
if that's important at all.
I don't think that would hurt at all.
I don't know about Tony. He wasn't in my notes. And
Okay. So is there any discussion on the minutes of those three meetings? If there is none, I would entertain a motion to approve. So moved. By Michael.
Second.
Support by John or Michaela or Courtney, somebody over there. I'm historic, no. Whoever that might have been. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Action, bills to be paid and financials and bills to be paid the amount of $29,195.62. Since we have to the tune of 2 or 3 meetings that we haven't reviewed the financials and things, I'll give everybody a moment to kind of dissect and clarify, so forth and so on.
the only question I had was the $1,000 admin fee for December. What was that?
That's a fee you actually pay every month towards the city to help offset the cost of myself and other staff. It's kind of a catch-all for city services.
I had a question on the winter taxes for 60 West Chicago. It was explained those might not be winter taxes. Can that be clarified for me?
Yes, it's actually parking lot assessment. And so Deb shared with us, and I can share with you also, the letter that they usually send out when they determine that assessment amount. But they send the letter quite far ahead of when you actually pay that bill. Keith, is it 4 years? The time frame for? 4 or 5. Yeah, 4 or 5 years. So
it's only paid every 4 to 5 years. It's assessed every 4 to 5 years. Please, thank you, Keith.
Right, it's reestablished or reapproved every 4 or 5 years by council.
There you go.
It's brought back. There's a public process by which they get comment as to the necessity of it. And then if they reinstitute it, then it gets applied annually to each of the property owners downtown for the ensuing 4 years.
And that formula consists of that potential building's usage of that lot and traffic and so forth and so on, correct?
It's square footage, proximity to a parking lot. So if you're abutting a parking lot, you're gonna pay more. If you have a larger building, you're gonna pay more. If you're further away from one of the city parking lots, you're gonna pay less. But it's applied to help, and the funds are used to conduct all of the maintenance on the parking lots. So we have 6 downtown public parking lots, and everything from pavement maintenance to landscaping to, thankfully, we haven't had to do too much snow and salt removal this year, but knock on wood. But all of those things go into the annual maintenance of the parking lots, above and beyond any capital improvements.
Do we know what this number is in perspective to 4 years ago? Or can we obtain that number? Some of this I'm doing for clarification for new board members.
Right.
Because many of these things, just kind of happen and so
Oh,
forth and so on.
definitely, yeah.
But I am curious how that lot is affected in proportionate to the usage of the apartment complex, that obviously they own the parking lot and we maintain. So this is a direct funding to that maintenance. It doesn't go through the apartment complex. Is that true?
Well, the apartment complex pays a prorated portion too, as part of their payment in lieu of tax. And I'd have to get the specifics to you. I don't have those off the top of my head, but yes, it is. It includes that lot because we, in our agreement, we maintain that lot as a public lot.
So that means the city, has agreed to the expense of maintaining that lot?
Correct. On the annual expense. So they're responsible for covering any, of course, they were responsible for the construction of the lot. Then it was turned over effectively to the city for operation and maintenance. And then at whatever point in the future that large physical repairs need to be made, that would be their responsibility too. But we conduct it, we maintain it on an annual basis, snow removal, landscaping, we'll stripe it, those type of things.
Okay, very good. Any questions on that area?
Audrey, I'm just wondering, can we get it recategorized to note that it's a parking lot assessment? I'm just thinking, like, as we're building budgets and things like this in future years, I think, we might look at that and say,
Yeah, I'll ask finance department how they input those
Okay.
and bill them.
Okay. Maybe any other questions from the board? I was curious about the trash can downtown area. What's the breakdown on that? I don't recall a discussion on that, and maybe I'm just not recalling.
So we set aside, you budget funds every year for downtown maintenance and essentially Lisa and I split the cost of additional trash cans downtown. The city bought additional ones for the new park, and given some of the conditions downtown, we wanted to add a few more in the ensuing blocks. So we divided the cost between the city and DDA.
So the same design that's been used in the past?
Yes, yeah, all
Just additional?
Yeah.
And replacement? Okay. Any other questions? Anything on the financials? Obviously, we were discussing the bills to be paid there. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the bills to be paid and the financials. The bills to be paid, the amount of $29,195.62.
So moved.
Moved by Michael. Support by John. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Keith. Old business, since nothing added. New business, Tibbetts update. Chris, would you like to give us an overview quick, please? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you once again for letting me give a Tibbetts update. We are very busy. This weekend, we have the Queen Tribute Band tied in with, of course, Snow on Monroe and Winterfest and all of that. We've always concluded it with a tribute band. Tickets are going very well, and that is sponsored by Haas Cadewood, and we're appreciative of that. We're also very, very busy working on summer theater already. And I think I announced the season. It did change slightly. We are opening with I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, and then Godspell, Nonsense, and then the Neil Simon comedy Barefoot in the Park. We're very excited about it. We are bringing back popcorn theater. We don't have all of the shows confirmed yet for popcorn, but I do know one of them we will be restaging Patricia Polacco's Union City, which was a show written a few years ago by Bob James and Charles Burr for Tibbetts, working with Patricia Polacco. So we're very excited about that. We also will be tying that in with an art exhibit of Patricia Polacco. So exciting things for this summer. People are really happy. We're hearing a lot already about having popcorn theater back. So we're glad to be able to do that. We'll also be trying something new. We've done the cabarets at the restaurants in the past. We're going to try it at Tibbetts. So following a couple of shows, there will be little cabaret performances that you can add onto your ticket and enjoy a beverage with some very close contact performances with our actors. So lots of planning going on. Already into the hiring phase of that and the auditions. We are already working for housing for that. So if you have a home that has an extra bedroom, please talk to us. And then also, we're also lining up all of our sponsors for the season. And then the rest of our entertainment series is starting to come together. We have restarted the classic film series. And so the shows that we did not get to do in 2020, we will be presenting for the rest of this year. So that one's pretty much laid out. Also with summer theater, our playbill ads are on sale now. So those are also going very well. If you want a premium spot, you need to let us know right away. And I think the DDA may have already lined something up, have they?
I haven't submitted the form, but I have talked to Stephanie, and she gave us basically first dibs on the same item that we did last year, which I
Okay.
think was an inside cover, full page inside cover. So.
Very good. So that's what's happening at Tibbetts, unless they're, and our annual meeting is next week on Thursday. And we will be presenting some checks from the Smith Memorial Concert, the benefit, and we're very happy about that. So are there any questions about what's going on at Tibbetts?
Thank you, Chris. Very
Thank
much.
you.
60 West Chicago Street, financing improvements and relocation of Children's Museum of Branch County, Lisa Miller.
We have a lot of content today, but if you have questions, I assume this will be a little bit conversational. We can answer those as they pop up. If you want to take notes, I've got extra paper too. So.
All right, good morning.
Morning.
Audrey's going to be jumping in here from time to time as we make this presentation so that you can make a decision today on moving forward or not on this project. Who is in charge of the clicker? All right. So as we had talked about before, for the new board members, we have an opportunity to bring the Children's Museum of Branch County back to downtown. They were originally downtown in what is now the Pure Envy building, went out by Family Fair, and we are looking to bring them back, and they're anxiously wanting to come back. So with that, we know that by having them downtown, they're going to have 20,000 cars a day see their signage and be able to be participatory in knowing that where they are versus 5,000 cars a day at their current location. Benefits for them also include increased square footage for programming and interactive displays, a greater walkability and a proximity to amenities, and then of course synergy with the Tibbetts, popcorn theater, anything else that they may schedule, and the Branch District Library. We really had done a lot of research, not only on our own, but through the museum. Pardon me, because now I'm going to have to put my glasses on and read from here. On the gift shop piece, that was one thing that was really key to us, is whether or not we were going to make an investment. We wanted to have a retail component downtown with the Children's Museum, which they have agreed to. They've already started a little retail in their existing facility. So they're gearing up for when they come downtown to have it be larger. And that merchandise helps increase loyalty for visitors, museum visibility, net revenue, et cetera. I like to look at it as, I don't have any grandchildren yet, darn it, but I do have a great niece, and having that availability to be able to come down and buy a children's gift is a nice addition to downtown and its retail component. 2/3 of all small museums report needing funding. Their greatest need is for moving and expanding into a larger space. For every job in our region, we're number 3 out of 9 in the country. For every job that is created by the museum, it is a 1.45 multiplier out into the community. And we know that they'll have at least one employee, if not more, if they grow larger.
And one extra item is, so some of these are, I know Mike and other board members had asked about the specific impact of children's museums, and those are kind of the items that have the most direct impact, but it also doesn't account for things like the long-term educational outcomes in your community for getting at-risk populations and other children through for educational resources. It doesn't really account for partnerships that are built or the effects of bringing families together across socioeconomic backgrounds, different backgrounds, and then of course the skills that are built by your volunteers and leveraged by your volunteers as children's museums across the country really do rely pretty unanimously on a great deal of volunteer support as well, in addition to their paid staff.
So the benefits for the Downtown Development Authority, we would have an anchor tenant, bringing diversity and unique programming to downtown. We would have a renovated ground floor, in addition to a new heating and cooling system that would serve future uses in case the Children's Museum were to vacate. We have 6,000 additional visitors to downtown annually, with the potential to grow with the museum. And critical exterior building maintenance would be completed. Really the piece too, that as we look at the different projects and companies and activities that we want to try and bring downtown, Children's Museum contribute to local economies and reduce those economic barriers. But more than 30% of children's museums are part of downtown revitalization projects. So the renovation scope on that first floor is the retail area, bathrooms, arts and party room, rentable space from that party room, which they have been very active through COVID, renting their space consistently. While they had to close their main facility, they were able to, because you were in your pod, if you will, use all of their rentals and have consistent income from having parties within their party rooms. We'd be activating those storefront windows. We have asbestos remediation that will have to take place, new HVAC upgrades, actually a whole new system. We quoted for both, and a whole new system is the best way to go. Ceiling repair, electrical, new paint, tempered glass. We have a quote for either as needed or to look at some additional items. A new awning fabric out on front. We'll use the frame, and then flooring. So just as a reminder, this is the original floor plan that was done by Intersect for the main floor area. You can see a very large retail space indicated here. And then the areas in the light creamy color, that is the area that would be needed for future expansion if we were to get a developer to go to the second and third floor. So in conversations with the Children's Museum, it's been really important for me and for them. Audrey and I have discussed this. We don't want to be in a situation where 6 months after they're in, we get a developer and they want to go into the second or third floor, and then we have to come in and radically disrupt, excuse me, the Children's Museum. So in our design, excuse me, in our design, working with Ivan Spooner and the Children's Museum, you'll see how we are allowing those spaces to be utilized, but also separated out so that they can easily accommodate construction if we were going to go to that second and third floor. You can see on this vision board here, and it's the same as what is on the screen. What we are opting for is a much smaller retail space. You can see that off the entrance to the east. If you're going to come in, the smaller retail establishment, everything that's highlighted in yellow is that same area that would have to be used for renovation if we were going to go to the second and third floor. So that's going to be designated in a different way through a different colored carpeting. But that is, while they'll be able to utilize it, for instance, they're not going to put their great big, huge, heavy, hopefully they're going to get soon, water table on that, in that area. The design shows a kind of a walkway. All the existing wall across the front and any of the poles that are there are not going to go away. Those are all structural. The only demolition that we would have would be in the back room areas where there are just temporary walls. And then we have placed the party room in the back, again, because we don't want to take up bathrooms in a space that maybe is going to have to be upgraded for the elevator and other areas of future development. The existing stairs are all going to stay where they are. There is some funding in our development for putting up just like maybe some gates. And so nothing structural from that standpoint will be changed, just in the back to where we can and ultimately end up putting up the bathrooms. You can see from that vision board, the Children's Museum uses primary colors. They want to continue to do that. And then just some examples of different types of things that we're looking at from a design element to have on the walls and painting and brighten that space up. And again, we'll be working with Ivan Spooner, who's working directly with the museum to put together some long-term designs on the interior. Lots we can do with paint and cool displays.
You guys have questions about the layout they're looking at currently?
I had a question on bathrooms, Lisa. I think at one point we had talked about putting those bathrooms up in front so that DDA could use them and we can use them for events.
Yes.
But is it too costly to make that move? Is that
It's very costly to make that move.
Okay.
And then it also is that they, the idea of, excuse me, having that open and having that manned, like for, let's say for an event. But if they're open for, during a festival, they still have those public bathrooms that could be utilized off the back further behind. That is also something, Courtney, is if we get into a developer situation where we can look to see what other options may be. But for this particular, we've pushed the element on the cost for this at this point. What we're proposing is less than what Ledidka had proposed for doing the entire floor, and really not able to afford that at this point.
The carpet, is the carpet going on all the flooring? And I don't remember, was that hardwood in there?
It's carpeted currently.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, carpeted currently. We talked about different options with that. So much of what the Children's Museum do, they like to have colorful carpeting. They put in a lot of times pieces that are easy to replace. But also the water runoff. We actually had that situation at the new rec center where a carpet came all the way up to the, hard floor came all the way up to the door, and they had such water gathering even when people came in that they ended up doing like a more of a water retention type carpeting, and then led into the hard surface. We also are looking at that honestly from a cost standpoint. It's $6 a square foot. $5 to $6 a square foot for carpet and $12 a square foot for hard surfaces. So that is what they actually prefer for the Children's Museum, is a carpeted area for them. And cost-wise, it was much less expensive. We would have hard surfaces in the, I believe in the bathrooms That's where we're looking, and then maybe some parts of the entrance.
But currently, there's already carpet on top of whatever's
Yes.
underneath.
Mhm.
Okay.
You flip back to the original design from, yeah, just to compare one more time.
One of the things working with Bill Ledick on this is he indicated that when we come up with a design, we being the Children's Museum and ourselves, it's less that he might have to do in regard to construction drawings. But as I get further in the presentation, we'll see that we may not need to have construction drawings, but he indicated that, he can design that space anyway. This was just a preliminary, specifically for those two areas, to know that if we were to go to second and third floor apartments, that area would have to be utilized for those.
That's the yellow area, of course.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next. This is an example of the renovation scope of the exterior of the building. You can see the design on the left that shows the original brick. Oh, excuse me, that's not original brick, but it's the brick that was covered up, the original brick back in the 60s. And all of the architectural significant pieces of those windows were taken off at the time. So that design shows the building with just keeping the red brick in the front, taking that darker gray color that she has up on the board around the sides and to the back, and then utilizing a dark awning with the Children's Museum logo. And then a sample of that is actually just a building in Chicago that I took a picture of that kind of had that color that I thought might be easier visually for people to have an idea of what we're talking about. The other building, the other drawing is taking the gray all the way around to the front part of the building, along with the side and the back. Now, while we don't traditionally paint brick that has not been painted, conversations with the HTC, or at least with Dean, indicated that that could possibly be considered, given the scope of the project, given that that brick is not a historic brick. It is a newer brick, similar to what was done at the Chamber building. That brick was painted white, and it was all a more modern building, a more modern brick. One of the reasons that we don't paint existing brick, obviously, is that it can have long-term issues as far as having to be repainted. But this particular brick, because of the timing of when it was installed on this building, could possibly be approved through the HDC to have it painted around the front, if that was something that the DDA chose to do. So lots of options. Ivan looked at different buildings downtown, different color schemes that we already have. Also things that would match the existing window frames in choosing those colors.
And also it's a nice background basically for future murals, since we're not supposed to have any blank walls, they tell us. And it's a really kind of like similar to how there's a Lincoln portrait on this one. It's a nice color that allows you to paint over with other designs and complements well.
I presume the facade doesn't include opening those windows back up on the west wall.
It does not. I did get a quote for opening the glass in the small square windows that are more at the, just above eye level. You see there, they kind of run about this high up on the building. We do have a quote on what that glass would cost to replace that, but we want to get in and not sure what will take off the wall. There's some pegboard, and whether or not that would be a financially feasible thing to do. We have it quoted in our pricing, and we're hoping to do it, but it's not guaranteed that we would do that. And they would do the same.
Bottom 4 or 5 windows you're
Yes, sir. So the renovation cost estimation, and I can tell you that several of these are actual quotes, and the rest of them we have quoted high to make sure we have enough room. But the estimated cost for the interior renovation of that first floor is $289,465. That includes a new heating and cooling unit, for the main floor and would also heat the basement portion. New tempered glass, that $43,000 quote, if we only do part of it, is actually 11. But we wanted to put in the 43,000 as we get through it to make sure that we had enough in the budget for that. That also includes a 4-foot tempered glass per party room. They're planning on bringing a wall about maybe 4 or 5 feet up, doing tempered glass, not going to the ceiling, and then having light fixtures drop down. So you can see what's going on in the party room from the rest of the museum, and using that, not having to go all the way up with construction. Carpentry, carpet, flooring, interior paint, the new bathrooms, plumbing, electrical fixtures, demolition. We have spoken with Chad and Todd with DMS, similar to what they've done at 7173 and at Putnam. They are available to do the demo that's necessary for that building. Stair fencing, that's the awning fabric quote to put new fabric on the existing frames. We will have some asbestos remediation, and we actually are looking at possible funding source for that, but otherwise that is budgeted. And then the construction management, we do not have to bid this project out, as we have our own in-house through the city can be the construction managers for that. So seems to be able to give us some more flexibility. We will be bidding out the other components, right? All those other pieces that gets bid out, but the construction manager piece can be developed with the city and our input. So the exterior of the building, we have had 3 different quotes. Audrey, I'm going to let you take this because you know the quotes better than I about what has to be done and the cost for us of what we have to do.
Sure. We have a number of items that the DDA has to maintain, improve, repair on the exterior of the building, regardless of any interior renovation. We've been cited by our own department for a couple things, such as the failing paint, some of the tuck pointing issues that we're having, and some of the material that is coming off of that building. And so the quotes for that work that is absolutely required, in addition to some cleanup paint and the exterior coat that we have to do is just under $50,000 for those items. So there are other maintenance activities that we have discussed with contractors that could be done, but they're not urgent and they're not something that is required for us to tackle right now. And I do have those kind of listed at the bottom just to show what might be future maintenance items for us if we're still in possession, or what could possibly be part of a larger developer's project. But currently, for this year, we will be required to tackle these items and get on a wait list or a project list for some contractors to do the power washing, remove the paint that's peeling, do the tuck pointing that needs done, and then also to recoat over with a type of material that works really well for historic buildings and the type of brick that we have. And then, of course, the actual color paint that we want on top of that, plus cleanup and some other items. So when we show you how much of a project we're looking to finance at one point in time, that will include both the renovation costs that we need to do and that would be done on the ground floor to allow the Children's Museum to locate there. Do you have questions about our required maintenance? Okay.
So one of the things that we were looking at as we were looking at payback was how do we get these renovations, and particularly given the fact that the Children's Museum's rent would be the #1 offset cost on that $300,000, and then making sure that we have enough, putting in the exterior. So we are looking to ask the city council to borrow $350,000 if you approve this moving forward out of their general fund. Loan terms to be requested, and we are going to ask for 20-year amortization, interest rate of 2% or less, and total monthly payments not to exceed $1,800. The Children's Museum responsibility for their rent is not to exceed $1,600 a month. We're going to be asking for no payments, no interest for the first year from the city's general fund as we go through construction and then having the Children's Museum enter. They would have zero rent for the first 6 months that they are occupying the building and running the Children's Museum. And then 7 to 12 at $800, 13 to 24 at $1,300, and then 25 months plus at $1,600 a month. The downtown development's $50,000 of that $350 can be paid back based on that amortization to $200 to $300 a month, or it can be an annual line item budget to be able to pay back that portion out of that general fund. That allows it all to be done at once and to have that revenue stream in order to pay that back.
Can we never increase rent, like past 2 years? Like in 20 years, we can't, like, how does that work?
So we'll have a lease agreement with them for, I think, a minimum of 5 years.
Okay,
And that would be then renegotiated each time
okay,
there's a lease.
okay.
So the leasing terms, we do have a lease document that we'll have to tweak depending on if this is approved here, and then of course depending on if the council will approve that. But again, the lease terms for $1,600 a month, not to exceed that throughout the life of the 5-year lease. Utilities are not included in their rent. They will have to pay the utilities. They're responsible for those on the main floor and the basement. We don't heat the second and third floor, but I'm sure there may be some proration that we may have to pay a portion of that because the heat obviously will go into that second and third floor. But we have all the documentation from the BPU on what those ran for that building. Structural maintenance to be kept by the DDA, meaning like the new HVAC system and condition, anything that has to do with the facade. And then the interior maintenance would be responsible, or I should say like even like plumbing, but the interior maintenance for the Children's Museum. So if something happened by one of their patrons for the carpet or the paint, they would be responsible for replacing that on the interior.
Just a quick question, where does awnings fall in that then? Is that under structural that we would be?
So that is going to be financed on the payback from the Children's Museum, that $21,000. But then the framing, that's our framing.
Right,
So
okay.
they're going to pay for the fabric,
Okay,
but those framing pieces are ours and they stay with the building. So funds available to absorb the repayment. Should the Children's Museum leave? Audrey, I'm going to let you jump in here and talk about our budgeting.
Sure. This is just to show you that if we run into a scenario where we don't have any tenant on that ground floor, but we're continue to be on the hook for those repayments, how can we afford to make that payment? So if we just look at the current year budget and we look at the two fund categories that we have the most flexibility with, that we have the most discretion, it's basically 9908 and 7580. So this year, the top one is funds for other projects where we have 17,000 set aside for strategic plan update. And then the lower one is the DDA rebate program. So these are two where, next year we're not going to have to do that strategic plan update and we can tweak the rebate program as needed. And this is just to show that we have over $45,000 of room basically to absorb the cost of repayment in a given year, which is honestly about twice what we would need if we are successful in asking for the terms that we listed previously. So based on those terms and that repayment goal, we would really only be repaying about $22,000 a year. Should we be responsible for that full cost, plus some utilities? And so this is just to demonstrate that we do have the ability to cover that cost if, for whatever reason, we don't have a tenant for a period of time. So I can answer specific questions about that. I know it's a little tedious and technical.
The 30, I understand. Where's the 17 out of? In the
Currently, this
budget?
is what we have in funds for other projects this year. So
Like the 30
this
is
year,
for
we've got
facade work.
17. Yeah, and I'm not saying we take this year's money and we
Right.
would need to put towards it, but it just shows kind of how much flexibility we really have. The other categories I didn't want to look at because it's travel, it's training, it's our promotions that, we really should be, it's like the core operations of the DDA, and these categories more deal with big, robust special programs, which, our building is, so.
So again, I understand the 30, it's what we've laid back for rebates and things, but what's the 17 in the budget without going into the budget? What's the line item in that 17,000 right now?
Funding for other projects.
Okay, thank you.
That was one thing that we know was really important to the board, and also conversations about payment is, what if worst case scenario happens, right? And you're sitting with a renovated building and $350,000 borrowed with no revenue stream to pay back. Can the DDA, in theory, pay that back from our existing funds? And we can. It's not what we want to do. It's not what we plan on doing. It's not what we would believe would happen even if the Children's Museum were to go away. We now have a renovated space that we can rent to other entities ready to go. So we wanted to make sure that you understood that worst case scenario, we do have funding for that.
And we did have Tom Eldridge, who kindly is sitting in for us in case we have specific questions. We made sure that the terms that we were proposing are reasonable and can be achieved. And so he did run an amortization schedule for us based on those term requests for the 20 years, the interest rate, the total amount financed, to show that we can meet all of those objectives if you were to approve the project and if council does as well.
As part of the loan process, was there any look at what the value of the building would be with those improvements? So if we had to sell at some point, would it, hopefully exceed that to be able to pay back the loan?
We have not run those numbers, Mike. We can have those done, but we have not run those numbers.
Okay.
I would say generally, for our experience in other redevelopment projects, is especially for historic buildings, it's almost like you're looking at the building as an income stream versus an asset that you are selling to get as much as you put into it. I think, is that accurate, you think?
Yep, these days. And the Kerr property is a perfect example. I mean, if she didn't have the funding that she had and had to get out of that building, she'd be upside down big time.
Well, and that would be, I guess, the ultimate dream, right? So let's say we now have this building that is really an asset to sell to someone, and or we're finding different budget possibilities for second and third floor apartments, that type of thing. But all of a sudden you've got a building that has this potential to have 22 apartments, let's say, if somebody were to do all that on the second and third floor, with the revenue stream from that, but also a strong revenue stream at that retail space, similar to what has happened at the Kerr project, where it took so long to get the retail space down below, but it was paying for itself because of the apartment revenue. So that's also an advantage to us, having that building in better shape to sell to a developer or to develop it from that second and third floor perspective.
And I think that's the gamble. The only way these downtowns are going to redevelop is with taking that risk and that gamble of some nature. To look at this as strictly a business transaction, it doesn't compute. So putting the team together to get to this point is about the only answer, unless you got somebody that just opens their pockets. So it has to be looked at, gamble or not.
Next slide. Thank you. So our key takeaways: we're requesting permission to seek up to $350,000 to finance 60 West Chicago, borrowing from the city's general fund. Total loan repayment, I think I forgot to switch that number out. My apologies. Oh, no, I didn't. No, I remember. The total repayment not to exceed $1,800 a month. That would be $1,600 with the Children's Museum, up to $1,600 to the Children's Museum, and then in theory, $200 a month if we aren't going to pay up our portion up front. We're requesting no payments or interest on the loan for the first 12 months, and then asking for 2% or less during that 20-year amortization. Tenant rent to cover the cost of the interior improvements and awnings. The DDA budget can absorb the cost of the finance improvements should the tenant vacate the property. And then, of course, we're going to have a vibrant key building in downtown Coldwater, contributing to our restoration efforts. So what we need
Yes.
is discussion and really a motion either to move forward to go to city council next, or if you don't feel comfortable with that, to not move forward with this project.
Questions? And I guess just a touch of clarification, Michael, I think in smaller buildings with like single apartments, your potential of regrouping is much higher than these massive square footage buildings. I guess I just wanted to clarify that. A lot of effort has gone into this. Questions, please.
Lisa,
Yes.
with regard to the plumbing, and I know you said that that kind of maintenance would be our responsibility, but in the event, say that, I guess like there's a child is, trashing the bathroom, or they've like substantially, God forbid, damaged the bathroom or something to that effect, does the lease provide for those kinds of instances for the Children's Museum to bear that cost because it was their customer, or is it still kind of a gray area?
We have, again, we don't have all of that we haven't gone through all that with the lease piece, but something like that would be the responsibility. My understanding would be of the Children's Museum. Plumbing to me would be as if it's not flushing, right? Or some other maintenance item within the plumbing system of the building versus something, to your point, inside of the bathrooms.
Yeah, in a typical lease like this, the structural items are often on the landlord. However, if the cause of an issue is by the tenant, then the tenant bears responsibility.
Right.
So in your example, if it's one of the kids doing something, flushing something down the toilet that causes that, then it's on the tenant, not on the landlord.
Which is why I wanted to confirm that that was something that we would have going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm sure with a couple attorneys on the board, we can find ways to safeguard ourselves.
Other questions?
Or comments?
I'm just curious, and I don't know if it's been discussed or we've really talked about like next steps. So say Children's Museum is in the downstairs, we do apartments in the upstairs. Would we be landlords? Like, would DDA be landlords, or would we push that, like, would somebody else take over, or like thinking about income and funding this?
So kind of two thoughts on that. We can condominiumize those second and third floors if we wanted to keep ownership and be a tenant for that main floor. That would also depend on who came to us with a project. So let's say somebody came and said, nope, I want the whole thing. Well, then we would have to make a decision on whether or not we were going to sell it.
Okay.
And then they would develop it as they see fit. That's one scenario. The other scenario, we've been really talking a lot to the state of Michigan about this housing crunch and crisis really that we have, and how an individual developer can use CRP to renovate their buildings to do apartments, right? They get incentives to do that. And the conversation has been, we have umpteen vacant square footage in every downtown in the state of Michigan that can be utilized for housing. But we have no mechanism for a downtown development authority or a municipality in order to receive those funds or to be the developer to make that happen, right? To do almost maybe, let's say, similar to what we're doing here. And so there is conversation about potential of being able to have those funds available to a downtown development authority. And Audrey, I'm going to let you jump in on just those conversations. So really kind of two runs.
Okay.
That we may have potential in the future besides just the selling it to developer or condominiumizing it, so they only own the second and third floor.
Sure, I think you covered it well. We have been spending some time in the past couple months to look at creative ways to redevelop the building, interesting projects that we're seeing in our state or in other states, and talking with MEDC about how their tools can be applied to those approaches. One of them, if it's a traditional developer, could be a keyless entry hotel with a mix of housing possibly that they've seen done elsewhere, but also opening up the community revitalization project funds to communities to be the developers themselves. So there is some trickiness, or there's kind of certain metrics that are more challenging to meet in your application, but that they have started to approve local municipalities, DDAs, to be the developers in those projects. So technically, it's something that could be done in the future. We could potentially be landlords, but we're still kind of finding out new information about that. But it is an option.
Lisa,
Yes, sir.
the 1,600 revenue and other ongoing expenses, are they covering that now at their current location, or is that based on what you would project increased revenues to be?
So they had originally had gotten up to having to pay $1,800 a month rent where they currently are. When the pandemic hit, my understanding is that they renegotiated with their landlord to have a lesser amount, but they have capacity to go up to 1,800 currently. But we wanted to make sure that we had our loan paid back and that it was comfortable for them to be able to continue to operate in that, in our spot versus another spot.
And that's another part of that amortization schedule that we ran, is we also looked at what portion of that loan relates to the improvements for the Children's Museum, and it would not exceed 1,600, even with the high estimates that we shared at almost 300,000.
So with the space set aside for potential development for the second floor, I saw on the drawings that there's still kind of consideration of usage for the back two doors as entrances. Is that correct then, that they would,
Yes.
until we have development, they would use that?
Yes.
Okay.
They would not be, I don't believe they're going to have people come in that way,
Okay.
but those would, and also from a fire code perspective on being able to have to get out, those would be operating.
Okay, but they won't necessarily function as an entrance to,
Correct.
okay.
It might just depend. I know I've seen in other places, like with Jennifer's apartments, you can have like a landing area where you walk into one door, and then I think you have the option to immediately enter another door. I'm assuming it would look something like that.
I would think parking wise, they'd want to utilize
I think
those
so,
rear doors.
too.
Right.
I don't think find anything left back there.
I think it's just a matter of having another, where do you put the door access for a museum? So if we go back, like the elevator is here, but this is a hallway. And anywhere in this hallway that isn't sharing a wall with a restroom could be an area where you then have a door into the museum. Does that make sense? Okay.
That's what I was thinking
So
too,
we're
when I was
looking at this-
thinking public restrooms, like there would be a door into the public restrooms and one into the Children's Museum, but it could be closed, so it could just be used for downtown events in the future, but.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
mhm.
So if we're looking at this hallway here,
Yep.
this is, I marked on something.
Well, I know you're fully aware, Courtney, but, you know, we're moving
I'm gonna
forward with
remove
public
that.
Right.
restrooms on Monroe Street also.
Yeah.
And again, cost and existing plumbing, that's why we've moved them where we've moved.
I was actually referencing the wrong area. It would be here, this other door entry. Or if there were going to be any bathroom sharing for events.
It almost seems like there'd be a way to have some sort of partition between the Children's Museum and those restrooms if they were used for events, so they wouldn't have to actually man
Right, be
the
open.
area. It would just be, there'd be access on those limited occasions that were to happen.
And
Sure.
there probably could be a hall
Right.
right there and an entrance
Yeah.
off the end of it.
I
Right.
think we were just thinking like some more centralized location for restrooms, you know what I mean, when we were thinking this layout, just to kind of think ahead to, you know, what we've got coming in the next 10 years or something, you know?
And this might be a dumb question. Maybe you said something and maybe I missed it. And I know it's probably kind of pointless, but what's the plan for the basement? Are they just going to use that for storage? Or is
So
it-
that's a great question. We've had that conversation in other meetings, so you didn't miss out anything I said today about it. So if we were to go to the second and third floor in development, the elevator would go all the way up to the third floor and it would go all the way into the basement. So at that time, that basement could be utilized for let's say the Children's Museum. You could have displays down there because you would be handicap accessible. Until that were to happen, that is only going to be used for storage. There will not be any public going down the stairs into that basement area. But yes, potentially, if we had that, the way it was designed by Bill Laditka is that almost like, you know, how you have a key fob where you go into your elevator and I'm a tenant there, I can't go downstairs, but I can go, my key fob lets me get to the second floor, or my key fob that lets me get to the third floor. But then if you're at the Children's Museum, you can go in that elevator and go down, but you can't go up. So they have different ways to utilize elevators that way.
Huh.
Any other questions or comments?
This may have been covered in the numbers slide, but is there, the two facade options, are they pretty analogous in cost, or does one?
Yes, they're the same in cost. It's just really a matter of color placement and or fabric design.
We will entertain a motion to take this project to city council requesting a loan in the amount of, how much, Audrey?
$350.
For moving forward with this project.
I'll make a motion
I'll second.
Motion by
to move
Courtney.
ahead. Taking it to
Courtney
city
motion.
council for 350,000.
Support?
I'll second.
Support. Chris? And we will talk about Chris in a minute. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lisa. What a wonderful
Well done.
thing to look into for
It's
downtown.
tremendously exciting.
Very much so.
Audrey and I have actually had fun doing this.
Did we?
For the
No,
most
we did. It's just the getting quotes and quotes updated and timing of things. And, you know, as you dig into, anyway, I'll save you the details. But yes, it's been tedious, but also very exciting. I'm going to blitz through this.
Well, hold tight. Before you do this, and I get distracted again,
Oh, yes. Yes,
as my internet distracted me this morning, we would like to introduce Chris Howell to our board. Welcome, Chris.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Sorry about that. That
No
was
problem.
intentional. Brief update, who you are, where you come from.
Hi, everybody. I am the marketing manager for the Treehouse. All of their locations. I have been a resident of Coldwater for about 10 years now. Originally came to participate in Tibbetts about 20 years ago was my first exposure to Coldwater, and I really appreciate all of you allowing me to join. It's a lot of good work happening.
Looking forward to it, Chris. Great to have young blood on board. I love it. Okay, now I'll turn you loose,
All
young
right.
lady.
I'll go fast. So we're supposed to follow a 1 hour meeting rule, as we learned last night during our board member
Which
meeting.
is
Follow it the same
I
way.
can follow.
We will not break it. I'll do my best. So just a quick update on the community survey outreach. We've done the press release, the radio interview, which you may have heard yesterday morning or aired today. I'm sending the survey digitally via MailChimp this morning. We've also distributed flyers. Katie Higgs, our CEDM fellow, and John Rucker did that together last week. To the downtown businesses and organizations. And then also, we're obviously promoting social media shares to Facebook and Instagram, which you all will be asked to do as well. We have other upcoming outreach, which is sharing that survey with Coldwater High School students via email that their principal has agreed to do, distributing the survey in an elementary school Friday folders. We have a Sunrise Rotary announcement scheduled that we were able to get a board member to. Matt will be doing Thursday. And also winter frames during, or A-frames during Winterfest. And it also looks like we're going to have a volunteer do some outreach at the senior center. So this is the flyer on the right that you'll see in your email box today when we send out that Survey Monkey, and that we'll be promoting.
And that one's corrected. We can feel comfortable putting that up?
Yes.
Okay.
So the one on my counter now I need to pull.
Huh?
The ones that were dropped off, I should pull, or is it
These are the
thing?
same.
That's
These
what
are
I thought.
correct.
That's what I thought.
No
Okay.
issues. And just a quick update on our Main Street pledges. I know we celebrated a big number for getting those letters written and signed last year, and but how are we at collecting? So currently, to date, we have almost all of the funds realized that were pledged. There might be just a couple outstanding people still turning things in. So we've done really well. We've got over $9,000 in donations for this fiscal year, the 2022 fiscal year. So well done and great work, everyone. Sneak peek of the Main Street Now conference. I had a call with Main Street staff this week, or last week rather, and talked about a little bit about the Main Street Now conference, which is a 3-day conference that they do at different location every year. This year it will be in Richmond, Virginia, from the 16th to the 18th. They have 3 main themes for that, and they are encouraging not just myself to attend, but also 1 board member. So start to brainstorm about if that's something that could possibly work for your schedule for a trip of that nature. I've started to do some brainstorming about logistics and budgeting for that. We can talk more about it probably in February, but I wanted to put it on your radar. And also note that conference registration is about $415, but since we are part of the Main Street program, they do cover 1 registration cost for us. Quick update on rebate program and development projects. We've got about 20,000 left total for that program fund. We already have 2 requests submitted for our next review date. Both of those are tied to larger scale renovation plans if those come to fruition. And we have 1 or 2 others that could possibly be rolling in before that February deadline as well. So this might be the first year where we possibly earmark out all of those, which would be incredible. And then another note, we do have MEDC's Community Assistant Team Specialist, Michelle Audette Bauman, coming today. She'll be touring 3 current and potential development sites in the downtown. So 1 project that is currently funded by the CRP, and then 2 others who are applying or could. And we'll also be taking her through the Taylor's building to talk about some of the things that we mentioned earlier and the redevelopment opportunities that would be available to that space. Upcoming events, just 1 final plug for Snow on Monroe for Winterfest and for Absolute Queen, if there are any tickets left. There are, okay, we do have some. I know there were a few the last time that I checked. Yep, and yeah, so we'll have a lot of warming stations out for that and events happening Saturday if you're out and about. And then last but not least is what's coming next month. So I'll be sending you, most of you will be familiar with the board assessment tool that was referenced during last night's training. Just a reminder to complete that by our next meeting in February, which will be the 23rd, our community presentation in the evening to go over our transformation strategies that are based on the survey, the stakeholder meetings and that data collection. And then of course, bright and early again the next morning, similarly to what we did this month, so that we can go over next steps and actually start developing action items relative to those transformation strategies. 901, that's all I have for you. Questions?
Great question, yes. Comments? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Audrey, very much.
all righty.
With that said, I'm sorry, we're 2 minutes late. A little better than last night.
You did your best.
Meeting adjourned. Next meeting will be February 23rd, as we just discussed. Thank you all so very much.